Oh yeah. The peanut gallery at the back. Right, we're going to do an intro to Drupal 8. When I came to do Drupal 8 theming, there's a surprising amount of this is how you debug these things wasn't written down. So I'm not actually we're going to build a theme quickly, but I'm not trying to teach you CSS, HTML and all of that stuff. I'm trying to show you, as you put a theme together and things go wrong, how do I find out what went wrong and how do I fix it? Or I'm trying to do something in particular, what should we do? Okay, I'll say otherwise known as debug all the things. I should have put debug all the themes on it. I thought about that this morning. All right, I'm Lee Walker. I'm the principal engineer at Code Journeyman. We're a Drupal shop out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. You can get me there on tweet at DrupalNougat. I'm Mr. Scumbag on Drupal.org. And we organise Drupal Camp Chattanooga. So I'm assuming you guys have done some Drupal 7 theming, or you know at least HTML, CSS, how to put some JavaScript in. In Drupal 7 we did it one way. In Drupal 8 it's very different because everything has changed. So we're going to create a new custom theme with Twig templates, hooks, etc., but also show you how to debug them as you're going through. Sorry, I got presenter's notes on one thing and right, create a sub-theme from scratch. We're going to use Bootstrap version 3, not because for any particular reason, just to show you how to shove Bootstrap in whatever your library or framework, if you happen to like what is it called? There's a bunch of minimalist ones now that people, Bootstrap's too heavy, whatever you need to do. We're also not going to sub-theme anything, we're going to create a base theme from the top, so we'll see how everything works. How you add CSS and JavaScript to the theme. The Twig templates, where is everything? Where to find them, what do you call them, how do we add our own custom ones, what YAML files we need, and this is the big thing, the debugging the whole darn thing. I don't know if any of you have seen John Oliver recently, but he used the term Twig and YAML, and that was what he gave us. Straight to DVD from Lilo and Stitch knockoff. Okay. So, how do we find out what templates we're using? Drupal 8, everything's a template now. How do we find out which ones they are? How do we override them? Do we want to put our own custom ones in? We want to dump out variables that we're sending to the Twig templates. And we want to use our own templates with our own naming system. How do we give our own theme suggestions for templates? Right, a quick, why Drupal 8 theming is better than Drupal 7. This is Drupal 7. Actually, I should say this horror story is Drupal 7. All of you guys have been theming in Drupal 7 have been doing it this way. And you can look at that and go, what the heck is that? And even the guy who came up with this diagram, I don't think fully understands it. Drupal 8, this is insane. It's hard to believe that we've been doing this in Drupal 6 and 7 all this time. There's so many things going on. What the heck is going on? It's very hard to work out where you are in this. There's no in point and there's no out point, you'll notice. There's all sorts of odd. This is Drupal 8. Comes in on the left, comes out on the right. There's a logical progression. So this is what. So you've got theme suggestions, alter the suggestions, pre-process with templates, render it out to the default template or your custom template, and you're done. In on the left, out on the right. Easy. It's about time. Right. So when you start with your theme development, you're going to want to turn on all the debugging. You're going to need to turn off, disable all the CSS and JS aggregation. You don't want any of that. Disable all the caching, or else your terminal will be drush.cr, 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 drush.cr. If you're cache rebuilding all the time, you've still got the caches turned on, and you want to turn all those off. And we're going to talk about the web profiler module as well that comes in Devel. There's a couple of really cool things in it. I'm going to go over that at the end that will just make your life a bit easier. Now, turning Twig debugging and caching off used to be, I have some notes for this, and now there's actually this definitive guide on this page. Just turning on Twig debugging isn't enough, because you're going to constantly have to clear your caches as you make changes to your templates. So you need to turn all the caching off. All these links are at the end of the slide as well. So when you've downloaded Drupal 8 and you're starting to do, you want to turn all the debugging on for your theme development. There's a settings.local.php. There's a default one in core, and you simply copy the one from sites into sites default and rename it from example.settings to settings.local, and then you edit your settings.php file to uncomment the last 3 lines here, and that will actually read it. Now that one actually has a bunch of development pieces turned on by default in it, and some of the things that should be turned on by default aren't turned on by default. So it's a bit, personally I think if this happens, your debugging should be turned on straight away, but it isn't. You actually have to go through and make sure it's all turned on. So when you look in the settings at local, it gives you this container YAMLs for the development.services.yml. That says use the development ones, and I'll go talk about that in a moment. Also, the aggregation is turned off in here in config, and the bottom 2 lines are very important. This cache.bins render and cache.bins dynamic page cache, you'll see they're cache.backend.null. That turns your caching off. These lines exist, but they're commented out. You just got to remove the comment from the line, and that will turn your caching off. So everything will be slower, but you want it to be slower because you're in development mode. Because Drupal 8 is in production mode when you download it now. Drupal 7 used to be in slow mode when you downloaded it. You had to go through and turn everything on to make it fast. Drupal 8 is in production mode when you download it, and you have to turn all the development modes on now, which is actually a much better way of doing it. There's also there's now in the 8.3 there was one of these cache settings, cache bins. I think there's one called migration cache. I don't know what that one does yet. It's commented out, it doesn't seem to do anything. It's obviously for the Drupal's 6 and 7 migration to 8. Haven't used it yet. Don't worry about it if you're doing theme development. Okay. The development.services.yml doesn't come with all this in it, which is kind of weird. You're going to have to add this twig config part where debug true, auto reload false, cache false. If you do that, now this should be the default. This is what it should look like, because it's the development.services.yml, not services.yml. So you think they've turned it all on by default? They haven't yet. You just have to remember to make it look like that, and that will actually turn everything on. Now, even if you do all this, you'll be like, I've just made changes to my templates and reloading it. Why the heck am I getting the old one? Your browser might still be caching. In Chrome, you actually have to go through, open the development tools, and check the box that says disable cache while in development mode. Yeah, well, DevTools is open. Other browsers, there's ways to do this as well, but a lot of us just use Chrome, so you can go and find them. And the way to tell that this is working now is go into your page and inspect, and you should see something that looks like this. Let's go and actually have a look at one. Hello. Great, my keys aren't working. I've got no control over it. I'm trying to see if I can have it plugged in. What's the pointer? There we go. I wonder what that was. So I have a straight Drupal 8 site I've downloaded. I've put a couple of development modules on it that we'll talk about in a minute. But you can inspect, and you'll start seeing all these this twig information everywhere. Hugely useful. Let's go back to Keynote. Okay. So in that information you get what template is actually being used. So number one there, it's saying begin output from, and it will actually say end output from. So you know what template is being used to render this piece of content in the page. You know where it is, you can go and look it up. There's also the file name suggestions that says if you want to override this, these are some suggestions from least specific, well, most specific at the top to least specific at the bottom. So page.html.twig in this case will do all pages unless something's overridden it. Now, number 3 at the top there that says theme hook page, this bit is frequently overlooked. You see the piece of information and go, what the heck is that? And that tells us how to name our hooks. When we do our preprocess hooks, that gives us the information, because you hook something hook is what it is. And the second one's in lowercase and one's in uppercase. You replace the uppercase one with whatever that word is. So if I wanted to preprocess the page, I could do hook, which is our theme name. It's a theme name, preprocess, page in this case. And now I can do some preprocessing. It tells you what to call your hooks to mess with it. And all the information's on that page. I'll show you a demo of that. Right. So let's create a theme quickly. LSW is my initials, just so it's easy to find. You'll have to define an lsw.info.yml, so theme name.info.yml. We'll throw Bootstrap 3 in as a library. We'll add our own JavaScript and CSS in. And these go into theme name.libraries.yml. We'll override a template. We'll use some theme preprocess functions to insert some extra variables into our templates, and then actually spit them out in the template. And then we'll also define some regions and twig templates to go with them. And what we'll also do is show you how to define your own theme suggestions for template names. So what we got? So okay, so this is our lsw.info.yml. Simple, straightforward. It looks a lot like your current Drupal 7 ones, with the exception of there's those libraries at the bottom. And that library piece is how we add JavaScript and CSS to our pages. You'll also see it says base theme false. When we use base theme false, what we're saying is we are not sub-theming. But if we're not sub-theming, where the heck do we get our templates from? There's obviously we've got to use some, because everything's a template now. If we're not sub-theming something, where do they come from? We'll see that in a moment. So base theme false. So basically, you get it from stable. There's stable and classy are two core themes. You will get the templates from stable. Nearly all of them. You'll see some of them later on, you'll actually say using classy. And you're like, where did it get the classy? I didn't sub-theme classy. Turns out that not all templates exist in stable, so it substitutes the classy ones in. Technically you can, if you're using Bootstrap, you can say, something Bootstrap here and build on top of a theme that already exists. Okay, so this is the libraries file. So it's the theme name.libraries.yml, in our case, lsw.libraries. And what you see here is the base. There's always a version number, how we had the CSS, how we had the JS, what dependencies they are. So you'll see there base and Bootstrap. If we look back up here, lsw/bootstrap, lsw/base. The font awesome is actually there. The thing's so big it's off the bottom. So that's how we load base. It looks at, bearing in mind this is YAML, so everything's indented by 2 spaces. If you don't indent it right, it gets all wonky. So you've got to be very careful at how you do this. The little curly brackets at the end of each of the CSS, you have to put them in. And most of the time you see that open and close. But these things are useful for putting things in. Now the most useful thing I've seen more is weighting them. You can put like weight : -10. And that one, the lighter the weight, the smaller the number, the lighter it is, and the earlier it gets loaded. So you can actually tell it to load your JavaScript and CSS in a particular order if you need to. Most of the time you don't. Occasionally there's some wonkiness and weighting it will be easier. This is where you used to go into the system table in Drupal 7 and actually write some values into the database to make this happen. But now you can actually just do it right here in a YAML file. There are other uses apart from wait, but I haven't used any of them other than wait. Okay, so if we've created that, we've created an info file and a libraries file, we can turn our theme on at this point. So all I've got here is a basic article and a test custom block. So at this point you can, oh, wrong one. You can simply turn this theme on. It will look at your Bootstrap and it will look at, so here we are, we can turn this on, LSW, set as default. Now this bar across the bottom here is the web profiler. It tells you all sorts of information, and we'll get to that. Oh my goodness, I've messed with this. I was showing someone something yesterday, and now it's not working. Right, here we go. So what we are, Kint DD. Where did I put it? Oh, it's in my theme. No, you're not. Great, I know I should have run through this again this morning. It was, let's take that out. Maybe that was it. April showed me something new yesterday, and I was like, oh, I'll totally put that in. Okay, there we go. Now you can see it's a different theme. First time swapped over, it's got to do a ton of work. There you go, so let's just reload the page. No. What are you doing? Come on, waiting for localhost. What are you doing? So let's see what it's doing. Now I've been getting this just recently. Incomplete chunk. Okay. There we go. Quite clearly it's not the same theme. You can, frequently when you add JavaScript to things, you can inspect the source and you kind of go find and they just make sure Bootstrap is being loaded. And you can see, oh yeah, it's definitely loading the Bootstrap CSS from where I think it is, just to test that it's being loaded. Normally at this point you will go to, we didn't define any regions, there we are, in our theme, and you'll shift your block and you'll put a block in a certain region and you'll get this list. And you're like, where did that list come from? I didn't define any regions. And again, because we haven't defined any regions, we're getting them from stable. And we decide we don't want these regions, we simply want 4 regions, a header, a footer, a sidebar, and a content. Yeah. So if we go back to our YAML, we can actually define regions. And then just defining regions isn't good enough. You need to touch your page.html.yml.twig to put those regions on the page. If you don't put them on, it doesn't do it. Frequently, because it has left sidebar and right sidebar and knows these things, if you just change the name to sidebar, all of a sudden your sidebar doesn't show up. And you're like, why is that not appearing? Because you haven't put it in your page template. So if we go and define 4 regions, we clear our caches, now you go back to the block and you get the 4 regions you defined. So this is the regions are now in the theme name.info.yml. So we can take a look at PHP Storm. So now it looks like that. Now we've defined these names, and quite clearly they're showing up. We've cleared our caches, they're showing up in our block placement. But when you look at things, they're not there. You can actually define your own regions. At this point, you decide, I want to have a new template file for each region. And if you go and inspect, you'll see that it says it's using region.html, but in the header, we've got region --header, --footer, --sidebar, --content. So you can actually copy them from the begin output from there, cause themes. You see it says classy. Because stable doesn't have a region template for some reason. So it gets it from the next one up. So you can copy that one, rename it to your suggestion in your theme. So in this case, it's my theme name templates layout region --header. And you can make edits in there if you want to make particular changes to them and override them. Now, this is what I'm talking about. There's nothing called sidebar by default in any default ones. There's left sidebar and right sidebar. There's nothing called sidebar. So you need to define your regions in your page.html.twig. So you've defined them in info.yml, and now you need to lay them out in your page. So that's where these four are. You'll see the page.header, page.sidebar, page.content, page.footer. So it knows to put them on the page. Once it knows to put them on the page, it will call the correct templates. Right there. So what we're really defining is something like that. Header, footer, content. We just want something relatively simple. Now, you've got your regions defined. In Drupal 7, it was very hard to just put blocks on a page and push that up to development, to live, because a lot of the blocks were content, block configuration. There wasn't any block configuration. That was all done in the database. It was a huge pain in the butt. You can actually, with Drupal 8, with simple blocks and regions, you can do a lot now. You don't need panels for a lot of things. You don't need display suite for a lot of things anymore. You can just use what core gives you to build things. And it is straightforward. So now we've defined our new region. We've got a template that we've defined. Now we want to insert some extra things in here in code to show on the page. How do we do that? I want to pre-process some variables and stuff things so I can actually spit them onto the page in my template. In Drupal 7, you can escape to PHP inside the template and do things, and you can't do any of that with Twig. You have to everything that you would put PHP in your template, now you have to pre-process. And this is, so if I want to add something to a node, in this case, let's view the node, this test article 1. In this case, it's actually here. So I've got an article laid out. I'm trying to stick this information in. How do I know how to do this? So my theme name is LSW. So you'll see this hook, preprocess hook is the API call. And you can see this implements hook, preprocess hook at the bottom there in the color. The first lowercase hook is the name of your theme. It's just like it always used to be in Drupal 7. The second one, uppercase hook, is this top red arrow here, the theme hook node. So whatever's in uppercase, you replace with that, and it works across a lot of these preprocess. So in this case, it's going to be hook preprocess node. So at this point, I can stick a breakpoint in that in PHP Storm, drop and kind of poke around the variables. So you can look up the hook preprocess. Let's have a look. So hook pre, in fact there it is, hook preprocess hook. Go api.drupal.org is your friend. So it'll actually tell you what variables get passed to it and some information about it. So that's going back to the list. You see there's a template preprocess and a theme preprocess. This is the hook that gets called at this point. You just know that that's where you stuff it. That's all you have to do. It's not where the heck do I put it, which one do I call, which one to stick in. There's none of that anymore. It's straight up there. Let's move through. Okay. So in this case, I basically the little bit of code on the bottom, I look at the node and say, what type is it? Is it an article? If it's an article, I actually put this LSW extra piece in the variables array with the words LSW extra var. So how does that appear on our page? So let's go find the... And we do that in something called LSW.theme. What used to be your PHP template where you put all the PHP is now called themename.theme. So this, here it is down at the bottom here. So, okay, so now I have something in an array somewhere. How do I get that onto the page? How do I know what's on it? I can understand I can stuff values into an array somewhere. How do I get that onto the actual template? Using Twig. The node article, here we are. So let's actually go through that and take a look at it. This article's not coming up. Okay, so if we inspect, and we look down here, there is block, region, page, there's going to be a node here somewhere, blocks, left blocks. Let's get it into, let's actually get the right thing. Here, so here's the node, here's the suggestions. And you'll see here it's saying there's a node article.html.twig. I've already overridden this template. So I've copied the original node.html.twig into my theme, because you can see here, themes, custom LSW templates, node article. It doesn't matter where you put your templates. It will look at the top of your theme and look down every directory. There's not a particular way of doing it. It will try and find everything, which also means you can't have two templates name the same thing in different directories. Because the first one it finds, it goes, that's the one, and then you'll wonder why the heck it isn't showing. But there is if you look in the core ones, you'll see they have some standard sort of layout directory structure. In this case, because it's an article, it's just templates straight in. Some of you might find template/layout, template/node, and there's some node special ones in there. Pick one and stick to it, or you can just smack them in one big directory, but I find that's very hard. After your templates grow, it becomes hard to keep track of them. So having a little bit of sensible division amongst them works very well. So if we go and find our template, here you can see I've just done this LSW extra. Like, where the heck did that come from? If we look at, no, I want this one, let's see this. This is the name here, LSW extra. LSW extra var. If we look at the page, we'll see it has actually spat it out. Well, that was quite painless. Doing that in PHP template can be, for Drupal 7, is not always the easiest thing to do. There's one extra thing here which I'll demo a little bit later. Node article. You see this, I've commented out this breakpoint thing. The nice thing about Drupal 7 templates, you put PHP in it, you put a breakpoint on it in PHP Storm, reload, the page turns up, you can inspect all the variables that hit your template. How do you do that in Twig? There's no PHP to put a breakpoint in. There was a big blog post about it because the Twig gets compiled into intermediate PHP and copied into an area on your system that's a weird PHP name. You could work out what that was, find it, and put a breakpoint on it. Reload the pages, and then it actually hit it. And so you could actually inspect what turned up to your template and poke around all the variables that came in it. Very useful. And then the next release of Drupal broke that. And you can never do that anymore. There's a huge amount of blog posts written about it. Everyone was super excited that now I can inspect all my variables inside my template, and then you couldn't. There's actually a module you can install that allows you to do this, that allows this breakpoint, and I will demo it. So that's pretty straightforward. So I want to add extra variables to my template. I do it in my hook preprocess hook. Theme name, first hook, preprocess, second name, whatever this theme hook name is. So if you want to process something in the region, LSW process region. If you want to process a node, LSW process node. And you find it by inspecting and looking for that theme hook name. That's just straightforward. You don't have to remember 5 or 6 different ways of doing it. That's just how you do it now. Right, let's go back to Kint. How are we doing for time? Okay. Okay. So here you can see the LSW extra, just curly brackets, the same way you dump out any twig variable onto the page. We can show you a quick demo of that breakpoint. Let's uncomment it and show you right. Let's turn debug listening on, back to this page, and reload it. So all I did there was I uncommented the breakpoints. In PHP Storm, you can turn the debug listening off by, it's a phone. I'm not entirely sure why it's a phone, but it's a phone. So I turn the debugging on. I've already configured xdebug for my PHP Storm. That's an entirely different presentation. I'm actually working on how to use PHP Storm for everything you need as a presentation because there's some very useful things in it. This is not loading. Right, so it just dropped into the page loaded, it just dropped into, you'll see it's this breakpoint extension.php. There's arguments, context, and environment. These are the 3 variables. If you do breakpoints and give it a variable, that will turn up in this arguments. You see, I didn't give it anything, so there's nothing in it. Environment is stuff about, I almost never look in here, but context values are the thing you're interested in. Let's make this a bit bigger, a bit taller. So now you can see what information is being sent to your template, and inspect it using xdebug in PHP Storm. In here you can see there's my LSW extra var. So everything at this level you can just spit out. That's much easier than the previous find whatever temporary name this twig template got compiled to in PHP, find it somewhere in your system, stick a breakpoint in it and reload. And if you clear the caches, that will change. So you'd have to keep finding it every single time. Now you can just install this twig debug module. You can install it with Composer, I'll show you in a minute. Just type the breakpoint in and it will drop your PHP Storm into breakpoint, or whatever tool you're using. But use PHP Storm. Right, so let's just continue. Here, time. So you can load the article, you can see the LSW extra var. So that is how you add extra information into your template. You can't do it in the template anymore, you do it in the hook preprocess hook, or hook preprocess page, hook preprocess node, whichever particular template you want to pass it to. So now what happens if we want to improve our suggestions? So the list of suggestions of theme names, they're not actually very good, especially for views. Views isn't very good at this at all. And there's actually one here. So you can use hook theme suggestions, hook alter, again, lowercase and uppercase. So the lowercase is your theme name, the uppercase is when you inspect that the theme thing at the top that says page region, that's what you replace hook with. So you can alter your suggestions. Views doesn't show many suggestions, so in this case it's hook theme suggestions, views alter. And that hook will be views view. And if you inspect a view, you'll see it'll say views view. And you can, frequently what I do is put the suggestions views view underscore as a single underscore, double underscore, then whatever information you want to put in for your view. You'll do this a lot to views because it's very basic. It doesn't give you like a list of 4 or 5, it gives you 2. And one of them has like a hash in it, which is entirely useless. So similarly, if you want to do a suggestion for a block, hook theme suggestions block alter, because that's it. So let's add a name. Let's add a suggestion to our region, our header region. So we find our region, we inspect, we see that theme hook is region. We have region.html.twig, region header. Let's add something, because we're sticking with the initials. Let's put LSW in the middle. So you see, and the bit of code there just says, you get the suggestions and variables sent to you, stick region LSW, whatever region name it is. And this variables elements region, because now you can stick a breakpoint in, inspect, find the thing you want, and now when you reload it, you have to clear the caches and reload. You see the top one is region LSW header.html.twig. So now you're actually adding your own theme suggestions, which is incredibly useful. And it's done through hook theme suggestions hook alter. And again, the same way. Lowercase, lowercase is theme name, uppercase is that theme hook name. There's only one way of doing it. There's not like 50 ways of doing it. And you take over a site and you're like, what the heck do these guys do? This is how it's done now. There's no mess of arrows. So the top one is inspecting it before we implement the hook, the bottom one is after. So also, we've got to install some development modules on our thing. So what do we use? Devel module gives us this DSM Drupal set message and DD Drupal debug. So in PHP, you can just do DD, and it will go to your temp directory, which is normally /temp, Drupal_debug.txt. So you can actually tail that continuously, and you'll see what I tend to do when I'm not sure what's going on. I want to make sure things are being called. Let's get to that one. As we've got theme, you'll see here I've got DD, I've processed a region, DD, I've processed a field. So there's hook, preprocess hook, hook, preprocess hook. And I just put that in, and that will turn up in my debug file. And if you run it on a Mac or anything that does that, you can just tail -f that, and it will continuously, when something hits it, you'll see it hit the page, and have a terminal open constantly showing you what's happening. So you can always just drop information in to make sure. If you're not sure this hook's being called, stick one of those in, reload the page. Technically here we can also DSM with Drupal set message, and that will actually put a message on the page and we'll say, hi, we've got stuff up here. But may or may not be useful, because of course when that turns up, everything else moves down and it doesn't look right. But it's also, it's useful. Then there's twigx debug, which allows you to put the debug in, gives you a debug twig command to put in your templates. We also have Kint now, and Kint replaces a very old, I think, what was the thing called before? It was Crumo. We used to use Crumo in Drupal 7. Crumo didn't understand objects, and it hadn't been touched in 6 years, hadn't been updated, it was really old. Kint is much better, it understands objects, and there's also something called Search Kint. And Search Kint, when you Kint out, there'll be a little search box above. You can type your search in, and it will actually open it up and find the things that match, which is very useful. Web Profiler, which is the bar across the bottom, we'll talk about in a minute. And then there's Xdebug in PHP Storm is awesome. So this is what the Kint will look like when you do Kint. Especially in your preprocess hooks, you can Kint out a variable. It will dump them all here. That first box next to args array 1, which is a minus right now, but normally starts as a plus, don't click it. If you click that, it opens everything. Kint is very, very slow. I mean, it's a development thing only, but sometimes you want to poke around and see what you can find. Normally I would set breakpoints here and actually do it inside PHP Storm Xdebug, but you can split it to the page and poke it around. If you hit that first plus, it will open everything, no matter how deep nested this is. And you might click it and your machine is unresponsive for 3 minutes. It's a very bad thing to do, just don't do it. You can use DSM to split the page. So in this case, Kint var dumps the information out. if you do like a DSM, that var, that prints it all open as well. So you might end up with thousands and thousands of object information on the page that you now have to like scroll through, and only seeing this much of. It's too much too much on the page at once. Now, Kint can be slow, but it's very useful sometimes when you need it. At least it only shows the piece you're interested in. Now, search Kint gives you this at the top. So in the case I typed element, printed submit, it opened it up and highlighted, in this case, this kind of grey, brown. It found the thing that matched element. So search Kint with Kint works very, very well. It's very, very slow. There's, I found this out yesterday, talking out here. You can actually, in your settings.php, you can actually do a max level. Only show Kint to level 3. Only do 3 levels deep. Don't do 50 levels deep, or however how much it is. So by putting this in your settings.php, you can stop that if you click the button accidentally, and I still do it to this day without thinking about it. Oh, damn it. That will stop it taking 3 minutes to come back. And your debugging stuff, just use PHP Storm. All cores develop with PHP Storm. If you're doing work on open source projects, they will give you a license. They'll just give you one. If you're actually doing stuff like that, they'll give you one. It's $89 a year for the individual. The next year it's $71, and the next year it's like $50. I get $89 worth of savings out of PHP Storm every day. It's just the way to go. Your life is so much easier when you do this. And there's a whole bunch of extra things PHP Storm will do apart from just debugging. So you can do it other ways. Just do it this way. This is how all developers work. This is how just for everyone works. We're not asking $500, $600 for Adobe. It's $90. Okay, so there's this Twig X debug project. This is what gives you the breakpoint. And then you can inspect that context values, and it will tell you everything that went in. It's installed with Composer. It has other libraries, just at your root, Composer required, dev, Drupal X Twig. That will download the library, that will download the module and its associated libraries, and you just turn it on and it works. Everything's going to be managed by Composer soon, including Drupal. You won't drush DL. Your Composer required Drupal, and down it will come. It's the future. Do Composer. Right, and we've showed you the dropping in. So what time is it? Okay, we've got a couple of minutes. Let's go. Okay. So, the web profiler. Do you really need web profiler for theming? The little bar across the bottom is normally used for module development. Let's go and pull it up. This thing across the bottom here. Do I really need that for theming? It has some theming niceties about it. It tells you everything that happened. If you click on anything, it will actually pull the full page up. In speed. Here we go. So, down here on assets, we come here and say, oh, there's JavaScript assets. Did we load the Bootstrap? Oh, yeah, we did. So instead of inspecting the page, we can actually look here and find it. We can hover over it, themes, custom, vendor, Bootstrap. Yeah, themes, custom, LSW. That's definitely my JavaScript that came in. So sometimes you put it in, if you don't remember to clear the caches, you're not sure if it's hit the page. You can actually come here and then search for, now bearing in mind that the CSS and the JS are actually separate tabs, so you'll have to flick between them. If you do an inspection, okay. If you look at the report, when you've installed it, you'll see these two warnings. D3.js library is not installed. Highlight.js library is not installed. Having these things installed gives you the timeline in that, which I'll show you in a second, and it actually, your database, it will actually highlight the code in the database so your SQL looks like SQL, and it's not just, it's much easier to read. The To install these libraries is a massive pain in the butt. You kind of have to add this decomposer.json, so it looks like that. So libraries / whatever library name is, it's a type Drupal library. Then you have to add these two packages into your composer.json. This is not something we should really have to do. But unfortunately, this is how we manage it with Composer. You can go and find them and drag them in and drop them in, but we're all going to be managing our sites with Composer before you know it. So let's make sure we do everything with Composer and make sure it all works. This is going to be cleaned up at some point. So here you see it's type Drupal library. It tells you in GitHub where you get it and where to install it, and there's a name. And then you simply, I say simply, you only do this once, so you have to follow the instructions through. Composer require the pieces, and they're dropped in. Now, let's go back to this. There's a timeline. Now, not many people get the timeline working, because when you come here, it just says, there's nothing here. Yeah? You need to install the D3.js, because it will give you this kind of information about what pieces happened, and where, and memory usage, and what's going on. You actually, not only do you have to install the library, you've got to add things to your settings.php. Again, this is a debug. I would expect this to be there by default. So when you turn the debugging mode on, everything was turned on. It's not quite that way yet. Once you add this to the bottom of your settings.local.php, everything works. And you get the timeline. A very useful thing you can do, I'm using PHP Storm here. Let's go find our assets. This tells you what it is. You can actually edit this, and so you click it, it opens it up in PHP Storm. So it goes to the file, it goes to the line. Actually, JavaScript isn't terribly useful. Let's do something a bit more useful on this. Let's go to the route. There's nothing in that one. So we hit this controller. What controller did we hit? Sometimes we'll have to go and look up. We hit the controller in the module. I mean, this is about theming, but this is about module development. You can hover on this, and that will go to the view function in that controller. Just loads it up in PHP Storm, and you're there. There are other things for other editors, and the way you do this is back to side. Getting it to the end. There's this configure web profiler. So these buttons across the bottom, you can turn bits of them on and off by, if you're not interested in the PHP config, you can turn it off here and it doesn't turn on. Down in this IDE settings, there's this. PHP Storm : open file. You put that in there, all those links that are hovers over now, you click on it, it loads that file up at the right place in PHP Storm, just you're looking at it to poke through. Saves a huge amount of time because you use it all the time. So that's that one. Okay. And there's a bunch of useful links for everything I've talked about in here. Also, there is a Drupal 8 theming book by Chaz Chumley. There's Drupal 8 theming with Twig. The only thing I have to say is when you download he gives you database dumps to work through some other things. He built it with Drupal 8.1. In Drupal 8.2, they turned revisioning on by default. So you have to download Drupal 8.1, install it, and then go through the upgrade process. Or just run it Drupal 8.1. It won't actually make a difference for theming. But if you try and edit it, it'll seem to work, then you'll click edit on a piece of content, and it will blow up because it can't find any entries in the revision table. Because between 8.1 and 8.2, revisioning was turned on by default. He might have upgraded it since then, but it's been a while. Can I take any questions? That's a lot of stuff to throw at you all in one go. Yeah? But it is straightforward. There are pre-processing hooks, there are template suggestion hooks, use your debugging everywhere. This is where I'm saying PHP Storm, configure xdebug for it, download the Twig xdebug, poke around, get used to poking around and finding the things you need. So you're asking a question? So.
Where do we find the presentation?
Oh, I will upload it. I'll send you a copy as well if you need a copy. This disable caching and Twig debug for development, it's all in one big page now. Yeah, you can follow the instructions through for copying the settings, example.settings.php in the development one and what you're supposed to do. I just put it all together and was going to build a Drupal.org page, went searching for it and found that. It's not called turn on twig debugging. It's called turn off caching for Drupal 8 development. But it's really for turning caching off and twig debugging on. It's all kind of together. The title could be better. I can't recommend Chaz Chumley's book highly enough. Really, really good. He also does trainings at DrupalCons and things personally. So, web profile is useful. It is a pain in the butt to set up the first time. But once it's set up, you never have to touch it again. Right.
All right. So I'm hearing a lot about Drupal 8 where you have to rename your modules folder, your theme folder, and maybe some libraries folder. That if you take a core update or do some kind of any kind of updates, it'll wipe them out. And I don't know if that's something pertaining to maybe a certain project you're working on, or is that something you've ever heard of in general?
You are putting your modules in modules, not core modules, and core themes. I haven't heard of that yet. Okay. That would be bad. Let's just open this. So, is there any other questions? It's a lot. Knowing where to go to do things and knowing where to find the debugging and how to find it. The X-debug inside PHP Storm will make your life hugely easier. You'll be able to, I'm not entirely sure what hit that page. I'll write a pre-process hook for that page that has literally nothing more than a comment in, stick a breakpoint in, reload the page, inspect what went to it. I spend a lot of my time in the PHP Storm X-debugger working out where pieces are. And sometimes you know you've got fields, and you're like, well, how do I mess with that field? How do I? And going into the debugger, you can expand the pieces you need. You go, oh, there it is. I knew it was here. I didn't know exactly how deep inside the array it was. And now I know exactly what it's all called. Yeah. Use PHP Storm. I know it's one of those things. I like using free tools. PHP Storm is great. Every year at DrupalCon, we drop by their booth. And we say, we love your stuff. We don't actually we just say thanks, basically, for making it work. Any other questions? I'll post the slides up. I'll be happy to take any, if you want to get in touch with me, you can, there's at the bottom there. Send me an email, ask questions. I'll be happy to help anybody out. Thank you very much.